morning, everybody. Good morning, Chicago. Thanks for joining. I heard the weather is relatively okay, so I hope you're surviving. I'm going to move right away and share my screen, and we'll start chatting. Give me 1 second, please. And this there, and here I am sharing. Can somebody please shout out and confirm that you can see my slide?
Yes, we can see you, sir.
Great, thank you. Excuse me for the coughing, it'll go away. All right, so today we want to talk about the retrospective. Some of you may have heard the word and some of you maybe not, but probably all of you have done something around self-reflection. It's all about self-reflection, and self-reflection, of course, at the end of the day, it's all about improvement, right? We want to improve. Otherwise, we don't need to self-reflect. I will start right away, actually, kind of warm up and ask people to just call out and say me or yes, or whatever you want to say, just very freely, if you have ever in your life participated in a formal retrospective in your company or whatever. Just say yes, or me, or I, or whatever. Let's hear some voice.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And please call out, so at least some of you, right, have been around that. And what about people who say, no, I don't know what a retrospective is. What I did is a postmortem. Shout out a yes.
Yes.
Or
Yes, postmortem.
Yeah, sort of a postmortem.
More of a postmortem.
Sort of, right? Okay. So you can see this is not something new. We're not talking about something new. A retrospective is just a kind of a postmortem. Anybody lessons learned want to shout out?
Yes.
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 Right. So you can see everybody's been around, did something, some form, some kind of this thing. So last question, just again, you can shout out. If you had a good experience with whatever, retrospective or a postmortem, whatever, just say good. If you had bad, just say bad. What's your opinion?
Good.
Both. Anybody else?
Good.
It was good.
Both. Depends on how you utilize it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. And well, what's your? I'm not sure who said that. Depends on how well you utilize it. So how did it work for you? Hey, Ellie, how did it work for you?
It's at some organizations it's worked really well where you take away lessons learned or opportunities for improvement or corrective actions or continuous improvement ideas and move forward with them. And in some cases I find a lot of excuses and sort of that has happened and it's the only time it's going to happen kind of thing. And if you're not logging and recording and seeing a trend, it's not really effective.
Right. How many of you have seen retrospectives or postmortem, whatever you want to call it, whatever form it took, where after that, after it was finished, good stuff came out of it? So a lot of companies, before you answer, a lot of companies sometimes do really beautiful retrospective or postmortems. They do all the meetings and people talk and there's a lot of excitement and a lot of note-taking and all this kind of stuff. But then that's it, nothing happens. World continues as it was. So how many of you saw, again, yes or no, good outcome of a retrospective?
Yes, good outcomes.
Yes, very good outcomes.
Good, okay. I hear a lot of goods, a lot of yeses. All right, great. Because if you think about it for a moment, this is really the most important thing. The retrospective is just a tool, right? The goal is to improve. If we don't take anything from the retrospective into the future and do something with it, we probably kind of wasted our time. So that was just kind of get everybody a sense of where was I in this game. So let's start. We'll do some introductions. I introduce myself very briefly. We'll talk about what is a retrospective actually. Why do we do it? How do we do it? And then in the end, we'll do a little exercise try it out, because one of the nice things about retrospective is it is lightweight. You don't have to do a PhD out of it, and that's really nice. And that's why it's gaining so much popularity in the world. So let's talk a little bit about myself. I will not ask you because there are many people, so at this time I will skip your introductions with your permission, and we'll move to myself. All this stuff I think already mentioned, but I'll go over it very quickly. I actually started as an engineer many years ago. I then went ahead and got my PhD in computer science. I've been in the world, the IT world, many years, information technology. Many of them here, I'm over here in the Silicon Valley area. So I've been a IT technical project manager probably since 2004. That's when I got my PMP. For those of you familiar with the PMP certificate, I worked any kind of companies, all the way from startups all the way to Walmart, which is the biggest company in the world in terms of number of employees. Sun Microsystems, Visa, Nokia, and Google, lots. In the Silicon Valley, you go around a lot of companies, but all of them, I was primarily a project manager in the IT area, right? By the way, I'll throw a question at you. If anybody, do you know, I said the Walmart is the biggest company in the world. Do you know how big it is? How many employees it has? And please don't peek at the, don't do a Google search right now. That's not fair. So just for me, what do you think? Throw out the number.
2.2 million.
Say again?
2.2 million.
Oh boy, you took the fun away, but you're right. People are usually shocked. Thank you. But anyway, thank you, Mary. People are usually shocked. 2.2 million, just a interesting side point. People don't imagine that. I usually said that the CEO of Walmart is actually a prime minister of a little country. So anyway, I worked on all these many other companies. Currently, the last few years, I'm focusing more on Agile and Scrum. I'm sure all of you heard, and many of you are familiar with that. Became sort of like my hobby, the area that I really like to work in. Right now, I work for a financial company called Fisher Investments. Some of you probably know them. And I am sort of like the Scrum practice lead, which means everything that has to do with Scrum and Agile, I need to take care of that especially in a certain one division, but we are spreading over to the entire company slowly. On top of that, as sort of like a hobby, if you want, I also teach project management, both Agile and Waterfall, for UC Berkeley extension and for UC Santa Cruz extension, two universities in the area here. And finally, I have a very nice list of certificates simply because I spend a lot of time, have been around for many years, so I had an opportunity to collect a lot of those. So SAFe and LESS and Kanban for all of those who may hear those things. I think that's kind of roughly about me. Any questions or from anybody about myself, about my background?
I have a question. So of all these companies that you work with, I guess, which place do you feel like you had the best like retrospective experiences? If that's something you can share.
Yes, the one I'm working for right now, which is, like I said, Fisher Investments. And the reason is that many workplaces don't bother, will begin with, right? So I don't have any experience. They didn't do any of that. I worked for companies who did a post-mortem, which is terrible. It was done in a terrible fashion. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. So actually, really the best experiences here, the company I'm working for right now, and one of the major, well, that's not fair. One of the major reasons it's so good is because I run those retrospectives. So naturally, you know, but yeah, that's the fact. That's the answer. Anybody else? All right, let's, last thing, a kind of introduction. Please ask question, agree, disagree, I don't care. Feel free to talk, unmute freely and speak up, because if I do it all by myself, it's very boring and tiring and not fun. So let's do agile and let's have fun. So let's talk now business. We'll go a little bit into this stuff. We're talking today, like I said, about self-reflection, and retrospective, like I said, is a tool that helps us to do self-reflection. And I like this little proverb on the right-hand side that says, "We do not learn from experience; we learn from reflecting on the experience." Okay, so really, it's all about learning and becoming better. Okay. This is why we even bother. So and so on. Now, self-reflection in general, retrospective people did not invent it. Self-reflection has been around many, many years in some form or another. In fact, I'm sure any one of you guys who has been involved in some way or another in some business process, any company, any organization, these business processes, all of those business processes have a very similar structure. They call it different names, they call it different stages, they describe it using a different picture, a different graphic, but all of them typically boil down to what you see here, this little graphic on the side, on the right side, which is a version of the Deming cycle. Those of you familiar with the Deming cycle. And they all begin from here. Let's do some planning, then let's implement what we planned. Let's take a check to see that everything went okay, and then let's act on what we checked. And act means let's do some activities based on this check. And the word check is what we call today a retrospective, or however we want to call it, postmortem, so on. So the idea of looking back and reflecting is not new. This is Deming. I don't remember how many dozens of years ago. I don't know, 70 years ago, whatever, he brought it up, and it was not even the first one. So this has been around forever, right? So we're not inventing something amazingly new, but we'll talk about what's unique for retrospective compared to other approaches. It has multiple formats. Like I said, everybody who invents a process invents their own terminology and their own little graphic to show it. It has many names. We talked already about that, right? Postmoderns, lessons learned, and also retrospective. Some call it self-reflection, and so on and so forth. Analysis. It does apply to individuals, and applies also to organizations and groups. Maybe not all of you have been involved in that or thinking about it, but you can do a retrospective for yourself. Not only for your professional life, your personal life. How have I been as a person? Anywhere, anything, whenever you want to learn, right? If you undergo a significant event in your life, you can do a retrospective. What happened to me? Why did it happen? What do I learn from that? This kind of stuff. So a lot of people ask themselves, so what's the difference between lessons learned, or what we call postmortem sometimes, in retrospective? I just throw it out right now that the biggest difference, right, is that the lessons learned usually are heavyweight. They are big, take a long time. It's include a lot of work, and I'll go into this a little bit more later. Whereas the retrospective, I call it the young cousin. It's young, it's agile, it's short, it's simple, it's quick, and in my opinion, accomplishes the same goal. And so I almost want to say, why do you bother with a lessons learned? Do a retrospective. Much nicer. So far, any questions? Okay. A little bit more. Used to call it postmodern, considered to, even if you do lessons learned, right? It's considered to be politically incorrect anymore to use this word. It is usually conducted after significant events, like we finished a project or we finished a big effort. Sometimes it's also used only after something really bad happened, like some kind of a big failure in operations, on the operations side, a big incident that happened, and people then say, we've got to have a lesson learned, we've got to do a lessons learned, or postmortem. The interesting, what that means is that it's relatively infrequent. if you do it at the end of the project and the project is, 6 months, you do it every 6 months or 1 year or whatever, however long the project took. But that's a long time to reflect and learn, because you can learn a great deal and reflect a great deal while the project is still running. Why do you wait all the way to the end of the project? Right? Retrospective doesn't like that. Doesn't look at it this way. It also is heavyweight. It's deep. It's thorough. It's detailed. For those of you who did participate in lessons learned, and especially if you thought it was a good job. Again, would you agree or disagree that it was heavyweight? Anybody wants to chime in from your experience? What your experience was?
Yeah, oftentimes it's been, this is Tracy, oftentimes it's been saved until the very end. And that's where I can see the value of a retrospective happening throughout the process, kind of individual checkpoints. And I'm excited to learn some more about this. But yeah, but lessons learned is pushed all the way to the end. And, it's.
I would even say, first of all, absolutely correct, but even say more important than that, you can improve how you do the project mid-run, in the middle of the project. If you wait to the end of the project and you do a postmortem, that's very valuable, but you cannot improve how you do the project that already ended. You missed the opportunity to do better during the project. Right? Now you can do better only on the next project. Right? So that's a very good comment, a good, correct comment. But also,
this is Marcia. I also think that by waiting till the end, you don't capture everything. There's a lot of little smaller things that you think about in that moment, and if you captured it closer, you'll miss it. And that is part of your opportunities for improvement.
Oh, wonderful. Absolutely. I mean, if a project takes a year and you start thinking back, you're right. You probably will remember the big things or the things that really touched your mind. The really things irritated you, maybe. But there's a million, excuse me, a million different things smaller things that are useful and important. Not only that you forget them, but they don't feel so important anymore. Right. But you may be missing something. Absolutely correct. So makes a lot of sense to do it sooner. But if you're going to take 2 days to do a postmortem every week or every month, that's not worth it, right? It's going to be way too much probably to spend all the work and all the preparations and bring in, 50 people or however many you bring into the postmortem for a whole day. Just count how many hours are getting wasted, not wasted, but invested in this. And this is where retrospective is coming from. They're trying to do it much easier, simpler. And of course, everything goes in a postmortem or lessons learned with a comprehensive documentation set. People spend hours and hours and hours to write the documentation. Then they put it in the drawer, very happy and proud, and never do anything with it. And they check off and say, okay, we did a postmortem, we can move on. And what? So what? Right? So that's it. So let's see what Dilbert says. Let's do a postmortem on our failed project to see what we did wrong, says the pointy hair manager. Well, we allowed idiots to make decisions. You say that every time. I haven't been wrong yet. Excuse me for the thought, it'll go away. So that's not how you want to do retrospective, but it's fun. So let's talk a little bit about specifically now a retrospective. It is a lightweight, really, lessons learned, right? As we said it earlier. It became prominent. It was not invented by Agile, the Agile world, but it became prominent and very popular there. So Agile management, because they emphasize light and quick and simple, right? And I even wrote this little sentence here: maximize work not done. Does anybody recognize where this is coming from? Anybody wants to tell us where is this coming from? Maximize the work not done. Anybody familiar with that?
Is that the Agile Manifesto?
Almost, yes. It's the principles, one of the principles.
Okay.
So beyond the manifesto, Agile has what's called 12 principles, and this is, I stole it out of one of the principles of Agile. That says that in Agile, it's very important to maximize the work not done, which is the way Agile says, keep it simple, keep it simple. Maximize work that you don't do. Don't waste time on lots of work if you don't have to do it. And this is where a retrospective is coming from, right? People looked at lessons learned and said, this is too heavyweight. I'll just give you an example. Many years ago, I worked for a company, actually a small company, relatively, about 80 people, 60, 70 people. And they decided to do a postmortem because back then, retrospective was not yet very popular. And they did a postmortem which was full 2 days, 2 full days, 8 hours each with breaks, about 100 people in a big room, including vice presidents and directors and who not. It was huge. And they wrote probably a 100-page document of notes and comments and decisions and feedback. I mean, it was, I remember I suffered. And at the end, like I said earlier, they put it very proudly in the drawer and didn't do anything with it. And so you had about 100 people, or sorry, a little less, maybe 70 people, spending 16 hours, do your math, on wasted time, because they did nothing with it. And they probably could have done the same amount of work, or the same accomplishment with much less time, much more efficiently. So this is where Agile is coming from, and the retrospective is coming from. Okay? So we're looking for something much faster, quickly, and also, like I said earlier, the idea is to be able to do it frequently. And so we don't want to have to do hours and hours of preparations also. And this is where it's coming from. Okay. So it's only one style. I just remind everybody, retrospective. You don't have to do it, of self-reflection. It gained popularity in the Agile community, but I'm sure other places also use it. Lightweight, and comes in many flavors. We'll see a few examples kind of whet our appetite. Any questions so far about the origins and why? I'm looking at my clock just to make sure we are on time. Okay, let's continue. So here's an example. I'll show you some examples, and you can see what it looks like. A lot of companies, when they do a retrospective, they like it to be visual. And these examples you can use online with something like Miro, those of you who know Miro. Or you can do it if ever we, let's not be pessimistic. When we go back into our offices and work normally, and so you go around you go into a meeting room and you do this on a board, right? So this is just an example where you have this arrow. It's called return on time invested. People have stickies, red, yellow, and green stickies, and they don't even have to write anything on the stickies, although they are welcome to do that. And you just ask people to walk up to the board and put the red sticky down here at the area, or yellow sticky in the middle, or green sticky at the top, according to no benefit from the time invested, break even, high return. So this takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes. People go, they put the sticky notes. If you ask them, you can ask them as the facilitator to also, on the sticky notes, write specific comments. Why do you say no benefit? Okay, so you can write something there that helps understand, but you don't have to. So if you write something, people write something, instead of 2 minutes, it will take 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes. Okay, but that's it. You already collected the feedback in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Why do it 3 days? Yes, in 2 days, you will get a great deal more detail, but isn't this awesome? Don't you learn a great deal of stuff from just looking at this, just collecting this? If you see, 10 red sticky notes and 1 green sticky note, nobody writes anything. You just see, so 10 red sticky notes, 1 green sticky note. What do you say? What do you say about this? What's your observation here?
It was low benefit.
Generally, for the whole organization, right? Thank you, Julie. It's not just low benefit. It's not just low benefit for a single person thought, but you immediately see that the whole group generally had a bad opinion about what happened. So,
Moshe, in this, may I ask a question?
Please.
In the scenario of using this tool, would you have to kind of preface it with seeding a number of specific activities or functions? Like, would you, I mean, I'm assuming you have to direct them to evaluating a particular activity in order for them to then put their sticky color in. How would you come up with that list, or how do you frame what you're actually asking them for this tool?
Great, wonderful question. The answer is both. Both are good and are good and beneficial. So what I mean by both is there's nothing wrong, and it's actually, I think, valuable to ask people, first of all, generally, how did the project go? If it's a project or it's a phase of a project, whatever it is, just tell me yes or no. How did it go? Without any framing beyond that, okay? And you immediately get some kind of a snapshot what people have, what sense people have about the project in general. But then, just like you mentioned, Julie, you can go further and start asking more specific questions. And that depends on the project, right? You can go by phases. You can talk, how did the project initiation go? How did the project execution go? And so on and so forth. Depending on if you do agile or waterfall, of course. You can go by other ways to, how did it go in terms of product management by roles, right? How did the product management work go? How did the implementation go? How did the testing go? And on and on and on. You can, cut it many different ways. But you're right in the sense that if you only ask the team during the retrospective, how did the project go in general, and you get answers, and you sort of like done, you probably did not dig enough. You want to dig a little more by asking specific questions. So as a facilitator, if you are the facilitator of the retrospective, and I'll talk about it a little later in this presentation, you want to do some preparations before you go into this session. So I'll defer the rest of my answer towards the end a little bit and come back to your question. Okay.
So
any other question?
Every member gets just one sticky note, correct?
Not necessarily. So again, thanks. Great questions. There are tricks and ways to do it. The simplest way is get one sticky note. Get one sticky note. Another way is give everybody a fixed number of notes, such as you've got 3 notes, do whatever you want with them, kind of thing. You can use one of them, you can use all 3 of them. There is no hard rule, or you can then give them an unlimited amount of notes to put, however many they want, because you will have people in the team that says, all I can say is one thing. I have 20 things I want to mention. And you should allow people to express themselves. Okay? So the answer is, you can decide however you want to do it. Okay.
I have a question. How do you do this virtually?
Very good question. If you want, so great question. So if you want, excuse me, like I said again, if you want to do it so like colorfully in this style, like I'm showing right here, you need to have a special online tool. And the most famous one that I know at least is Mural, for those of you who are familiar, mural.com, Mural. It's very popular these days, and it has this ability to do these graphics and use sticky notes with all kinds of colors. And it's collaborative, which means everybody can, and by the way, I'm not getting paid from them or anything like that. I'm not trying to promote them, but that's the one I know well. I just took a training yesterday, and they used Mural. And so you can do it very nicely. If you want it to be so like graphical and beautifully colored like this here. And in this tool like Mural or similar tools, you actually can type text into these sticky notes. Okay, so it's not just graphical, you can actually type text, and you can zoom in and out and move them around and all that. If you don't have this level of sophistication, you don't have access to these tools, you can use a document and just type comments in it And in fact, I'm going to ask you probably to do it at the end of this presentation as a little exercise. We don't have Mural. I didn't want to go into this complexity right now. And so you can just share a document. It's good. It's important to share it with the team. I'm familiar with Google Documents, right? Google Docs, but there's also Office and others. And you just type in what people talk. It's a little less elegant, but very effective. I've done it many times. Does it help? Does it answer, Sunil?
Great. I have a follow-up question. So the people that are in the retrospective, is it all the groups, the product owner groups, the system integrators? We have different large projects. You have so many groups, right? And
Yes.
then I've seen people do it individually and then
Yep.
roll up everything, which I don't agree with. I think all the product owner and the delivery team should be all in the same session.
Yes. When you say product owner and delivery team, that sounds to me agile. Are you talking agile or more generally?
No, it's a waterfall. Basically, it's not agile. We have a delivery team, outside consultants delivering the product.
Yep.
You have an internal testing team, and then you have the product owner, right?
Yes.
And what they've done is have successive separate sessions, and then you roll up the results, which I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I don't agree with it. I think everyone should be in it together, all at the same time. But what are your thoughts?
And what if you have, when you say everybody, all of them should be together, if it amounts to, 90 people? Do you feel comfortable running?
No, not necessarily 90 people. No, it's 10 people, maximum 10 people.
Oh man, no question. I mean, yeah, the whole team in vendors and everybody is 10 people.
Yes.
Yeah, I would be surprised why not bringing 10 people in.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds a little weird. The only problem with bringing a whole team in is sometimes a whole team can end up, 100 people, and that becomes
right.
Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
No, you're right. Large teams are unmanageable. Maximum 10 people is what I go with.
Oh yeah. That's even more than 10. 20 can work pretty well also. That's no big deal. But when you go into big groups, now you have to be a little bit more thoughtful how you do it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's progress a little bit. So what is a retrospective? Okay, that's an opportunity to learn. We said it already before, and to improve. It is time you set aside outside of the day-to-day routine. You said just do a formal meeting. You do want to do a formal meeting. Excuse me. Although a formal meeting doesn't mean it has to be heavyweight. It can be lightweight. To do it, and you want to reflect on past events and behaviors, right? In the most general style, you want to more or less answer these 3 questions in a retrospective. What went well? What didn't work so well? What do you want to do differently next time? And we'll see more versions. So if we look at this, for example, it's not exactly the same questions, but still 3 questions that try to capture the similar information. So you'll see there are many forms and styles, but this is the information you want to try to get, right, in the meeting. Any questions about this? Okay, so this was about what is a retrospective. So let's talk a little bit again why in a little bit more detail, okay? And I like this little proverb or whatever. Are you too busy to improve? And this little nice picture here. Are you too busy to improve? Take a look at the picture. It's really fun, I think. Sir, I have a wheel. It's round. No, I'm too busy. I don't have time. Okay. Are you too busy to improve? Think about it. It's really, I see it a lot, not just with regard to retrospectives and things like that. A lot of times when people come and say, I have an idea for improvement, and the manager or somebody will say, well, we're too busy now. There's so much pressure. We are so busy. We have tight schedules. We can't do it now. We'll do it later, and never end up doing it. And so we never improve. We just continue with the pressure. And I think all of you have enough experience also to know that pressure will never go down, because the executive will say, yes, we have a lot of pressure now. Just let us finish the project. The pressure will go down and we'll do whatever, the improvement. But in our world, for the last years and the foreseeable future, pressure will never go down. That era is over. That's it. So if you don't improve, you'll never improve. You'll never have the opportunity. So are you too busy to improve? Okay. So another one. This is, I think, very famous, a very famous one. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. It's as simple as that. Here's another example of how you can do a retrospective. You can see it's kind of the same principle. It's called the 4 L's: liked, learned, lacked, long form. Again, you try to capture through these 4 different questions, different aspects of the project or whatever it is that you are doing a retrospective for. Like, learn, lack, and long form.
Do you have, in this situation, do you have people put different Post-its on different larger pieces of paper, it looks like, that are on the walls?
Either papers, or you can, there are so many ways you can, if you do it physically in a room with a board, usually a whiteboard, you can use a marker to separate the board into 4 quadrants and ask people, put the titles on each quadrant. You put the title, like, learn, blah, 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 and then you ask people to put the notes. That's the common way.
Would you review all of them? It seems like that might take longer than your standard retrospective.
Yes. Yes. So the goal is to review all of them. So again, if you have 10 people, you probably don't have more than like 20 sticky notes total, right? Because you're not asked, by the way, just to make it clear, in this kind of thing, you're not saying to people, each one of you must put on this board 1 yellow, 1 green, one this. They don't have to put each one of them 4 stickies. It's completely freestyle. Anybody put any number of stickies you want, anywhere you want. And most of the people will end up with no more than 1 or 2 stickies. So if it is like a 10 people, you'll end up with 20 stickies. That's number 1. So it's not that bad, not that terrible. And then what you want to do, and it can, like I said, if people work with these stickers, like I said earlier, imagine it. It's like a 5 minute, that's all. You don't, usually in 5 minutes, it's all over. People think about what they want to do, they write it down, they go up, they put a sticky note, they're done. It's 5 minutes. So it's not long at all. Then you want to collect those sticky notes. We can talk about it later, but usually what you want to do is you want to read them out aloud, and together with the help of the team, group them into similar groups, because what you'll find is multiple people have said the same thing in their own words, in different words. But if somebody says the project took too long, and somebody else said we worked very much way beyond our target date, both of these are saying the same thing, right? So you want to collect them and say, this is basically the same thing. So you group them in this way. When you group them in this way, you go down from 20 sticky notes to only 5 or 6 or 7. And then you work on those. Okay, that's one way to work on that. Does it help?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? All right. What are the benefits? We talked about it, but I want to do a little bit more detail. So first of all, I intentionally put it at the top. People tend to only remember and bring up the things that are wrong went bad, or were problems, because psychologically in their mind is a retrospective is, if we want to fix, then we need to figure out what went wrong so we can fix it. But that's a wonderful opportunity to also recognize the good. Okay, make sure as the facilitator that you do it. Okay, it's very important. Anybody can, please chime in. Why is it so important to recognize the good in a postmortem, in a retrospective?
I feel this is Tracy. I feel that it's always important to kind of do a recognition of what worked, and then kind of sandwich that with ways that we can be better. And then at the end, kind of circle back to end on a high note and a positive note, because otherwise, if it's just a gripe session, the team can really kind of get down and it can damage morale. And it's that's not going to, kind of your last point, it's not going to energize the team if all that you do is just focus on what we did wrong or, you know, what's not working.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you very much, Tracy. It's exactly that. And the point I want to make, at least from my experience, many years project manager, please remember that as a project manager, you are dealing with people, with human beings. Human beings are not machines. If you ask a machine, you know, give me a list of all the bad things, the machine will give you a list of all the bad things, and the machine will not get depressed. Right? But human beings, I'm not saying they're going to get depressed, no, but human beings have psychology. And it impacts. There is some impact. If people come out of a retrospective or whatever it is with 200 bad notes without a single good note, it's going to have some impact somewhere. People may come up and say, we are a really lousy team or whatever, or our management is terrible or whatever. It's good to also recognize the good stuff. So do it. And also, in a sense, it's fair because it gives a better balance of and you know, judging how things work. How things worked. Right? It's a better balance. Okay. We want to identify opportunities for improvement for the team. Transparency. We want to be transparent. We want to show that we are transparent. We're not ashamed. We're not afraid to speak up if something went wrong. We're showing it to other people. That's okay, because it helps other people also to understand where we are, what we do, and also other people can contribute. Right? It helps collaboration. If we open up and speak up, even about the bad stuff, people later on will feel more comfortable to speak to each other. You know, it's like two close friends who open their hearts to each other and then feel much more comfortable to be close together later on. So again, notice psychology, right? It's psychology. It's important. We are human beings. We're not machines. Of course, process improvements, listen and learn, and energize the team. I think Tracy also mentioned that. So these are kind of the benefits of the retrospective. Any questions here? Comments? Disagreements? Or, yeah, this reminds me of. Okay, let's continue. Here's another example. It's called the learning matrix. You see, it's the same principle. Okay, what did we do well? What we would like to change? What would we like to change? What new ideas do we have? Who do we want to appreciate? Remember, I said, notice the good also. So who do we want to appreciate? So this is another example. All of these examples, as you can see, are very light, colorful, which also has a good psychological influence. Even when you ask people to stand up, walk up to the board, they move around, they start moving psychologically, makes them more energized. So these things are beneficial. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the how. How do we do a retrospective? What's the mechanics? And the really important thing is it's really simple and you can keep it simple. All right, so just do it. You don't have to look at the retrospective. Unlike the postmortem, you don't look at the retrospective as some kind of a big event that I need 3 project managers now to sit down and plan it out and work it like it's an own project. You almost like shoot from the hip. And in fact, you can see a lot of cases where a manager would come to the team and say, hey guys, I want to run a quick retrospective right now. Drop what you're doing. Let's go into the room and do it. And they go in, 30 minutes, boom, they come out, done. So simple. Don't make a big deal out of it in terms of the process, right? So you can make it as simple. You can, of course, make it elaborate, although the tendency is to make it simple. Again, I repeat those 3 points. These are the major things you want to accomplish. Okay, what did work? What worked well? What do we want to improve, and so on? What are we going to do differently? So that's about the goal of the retrospective. And sorry, I'm just sprinkling in those many different examples of how you can do a simple retrospective, right? So here's this one is the Agile software development from Alistair. So again, sticky notes, keep these, try these problems. 3 items. Okay, when do you do a retrospective? Just to recollect our thoughts about that, right? Whenever the teams feel, okay, it's valuable. So like I said earlier, doesn't have to happen at the end of the project. It doesn't have necessarily to happen at some formal official time points along the timeline where people say, for example, we'll do a post-mortem at the end of every phase in the project, or things like, or after every delivery or something like that. That is definitely legitimate. I'm not saying don't do it, but you're not bound to do it only in those times. You can do it whenever you feel it's going to bring value. And you might, and it really happened to me that you go to the office, whatever, and you work and you say, I have a bunch of questions about what happened last week. You know what? I'm gonna do right now, this afternoon, I'm gonna do a retrospective. And boom, you send out an email, you set up the meeting, everybody comes in, and you don't get resistance almost at all because people know it's not gonna be a 2-day event. They're going to come in a regular meeting, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, boom in, boom out, we're done, moving on. And you extracted the value, okay? Now in the Agile world, for those of you who are familiar with the Agile and Scrum and all of those things, it is considered to be a must, like you are obligated to have retrospectives. This is part of the deal, okay? And for those of you, again, familiar with Agile, in Agile, you work in short iterations, quick short iterations. You're expected to do a retrospective at the end of each iteration. Specifically, for those of you who are familiar with Scrum, okay, Scrum usually runs every 2 to 4 weeks. I mean, every iteration is 2 to 4 weeks. And it is built in the Scrum methodology or Scrum framework. They have a formal component, okay, which is to do a retrospective. This is mandatory, one of the mandatory or standard meetings in the Scrum framework that you have to hold at the end of each iteration, which means it can be as soon as every 2 weeks. Many organizations actually have even a shorter iteration cycle, 1 week, and some even shorter than that. So you end up doing a retrospective every single week. And it sounds a lot, but it's not really, because the retrospective is light and quick. So it's not such a big deal. Excuse me. Again, anybody has experience with Scrum here? If you can raise your hand or give me a thumbs up. Anybody Scrum? No Scrum people? Okay. Very little. I think Mark, you waved your hand. Do you do retrospectives there as part of your?
Yeah, we do retrospectives at each iteration, so it was every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, right?
We use,
okay.
Yep.
And you use what?
Mural.
Mural. There you go. So, good example. I'm sorry, I'm catching you on that. Since you answered the question, I will also ask you. We don't have to have a good detail. What's your experience with these retrospectives? Are they even useful?
They are. They address issues that you may have had during the iteration when I was using a Scrum, and then we were able to fix a way, help the team fix ways that we're going to tackle the next one, especially where we're getting first. So it was like a continual learning. So instead of at the end of the whole project, you're like, well, we should have done this differently. Well, what can't we do now, do differently going forward? And always thinking forward, okay, how could it? So it speeds up the process because you tackle those things where at the end, and like on a waterfall project, you say, well, you could have done all these things and would have sped up the thing. We would have saved 4 weeks.
Yes.
Well, now you're saving those 4 weeks earlier in the process, which is more money.
Absolutely. Well, like we said earlier, that's a very good point again, right? It's very nice to reflect on the last project, but you cannot fix the project anymore because it's gone, it's over. But here, think about it. You work in 2-week cycle. So if it's a 6-month project, just an example, right? 6-month project, 2 weeks into the project, all right? Just 2 weeks into the project, you already begin to improve the project itself. Isn't it a whole lot better than reflect on how the project went and you cannot even improve it anymore because it's already gone? You can improve the future, but not the past. So it's a completely different, value proposition here. right? So in Scrum, Agile, and stuff like that, it's mandatory actually to do it at the end of every iteration. And if you do it right, it's valuable. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about, so before that, any questions about the when? The when is really whenever you think it's going to bring value. Okay. How? Again, the simplest way is that you want to get a few people together in a room and just ask these questions, okay, and collect the information and discuss it a little bit and so on. And here's yet another graphical way to do a retrospective. This is more busy, but our project is this boat here. And over here, this is the island that the boat is trying to reach, which is our goal and vision. Along the way, we have icebergs, which are potential risks. We have the anchor, which is delaying us, and we have the wind blowing that is pushing us towards our goal. So basically, it's a nice way of saying put sticky notes on all of these, or however you want to do it. So I'm intentionally showing this little graphical things to show that retrospective is not only short and light, but people have developed sort of like a sense of let's have fun a little bit, right? Let's not be too serious. But it is serious. We're at the end of the day, we do serious work here. Who are the participants in a retrospective? And I remember somebody asked about that. That was Sunil, I think. You usually bring the extended team. So anybody who was involved somehow in the project and you think can bring value in the meeting, in the retrospective, right? Opinions, observations, and so on. Obviously, the team members who did actually execute on the project, that did the project, support people, anyone, leadership, customers. I should have actually added another bullet pointer, which is vendors. So it's good to bring all of those. All of them have been involved in your project, and they probably have something to say. They probably can contribute some insights and stuff like that. So you want, if at all possible, to allow them to participate in some way or another. Again, the only obstacle here is this may amount to a large number of people. And then you have to start thinking about how to break it down, maybe like Sunil mentioned, to multiple meetings and then rolling up. There's various different variations of how you might want to do it. But usually, again, because Agile is lightweight, you don't end up with a great deal of number of people there in a meeting like that. Any questions about the participants? And okay, I will do one more slide. I think this around this time, Kiki, I think we want to do a short break so people can take like a quick break, refresh. But I want to do one more thing before that. Or are we still? Oh no, we have still time. I think we still have time to go. So about the participants, I said here that we want to bring the extended team, everybody in and so on, including leadership and customers. In Agile, and specifically in Scrum, the guideline is different actually, okay? In Scrum, the guideline is only the team that executed on the project. And executed means, for those who are familiar, means the product manager. In Scrum, we call it product owner. The Scrum Master, who is sort of like the project manager, let's call it. Sort of like, yeah, sorry, Mark, I know you're making a face and you're right, but I'm trying to relate to people who maybe are not familiar with Scrum and Agile, and I'll say Scrum Master, they will not know what that is. So let's call it the project manager for this. It's not exactly so. So the team will be the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the people who actually did the work, who actually build the product, okay? Which are usually in Scrum should be somewhere between 5 and 9 people. So no more than 10, 11 people total in the room, okay? And nobody else. So Scrum says nobody else, just these people. And I'm emphasizing it. I want to actually ask you people, why do you think this restriction? This is in contrast to what I'm writing here, where I said customer and leadership and all of that. Why only the team?
Too many cooks spoil the soup.
I'm sorry, can you say again?
Yeah, sure, sorry. Too many cooks will spoil the soup if you
Oh.
have too much feedback and too many people involved. You can really get derailed.
I agree. And that's not really the reason that Scrum mentions, but I think it's a good point. Actually, it's a good point. Thank you. Anybody else about what Scrum says?
Maybe because of you want them to, first of all, be honest, and second of all, they're the people who can specifically change what they did the next time.
Correct. And it's actually the first point, to be honest. Again, you see what I said earlier, we are dealing not with machines, we're dealing with human beings. And even if all of these people will say, yes, I'm not worried that if my director is here or my VP is here, and I will say what I think, not all of them really will do it. Some of them will, yeah, but not all of them. Some people will think twice. My boss is here, my director is here, my VP is here, I'm going to think twice. And even if I'm going to say what I want to say, I'm going to phrase it differently, right? And so Scrum realizes this point and says, only the team, nobody else. And so we can speak up and say whatever we want, and we feel comfortable. More than that, not only that only the team will be there, the notes that are taken will be sort of like classified. Okay, there will be a request to the leaderships to say, we're not going to share this with you. Please accept it, that we're not going to share these notes with you. Because just as a side note, please remember that you cannot overrule an executive. And if an executive says, I do want to see those, no, you cannot say no. They have a legal right, a business right, but that would be very bad practice. So you want to get an approval from them to say, please, sir, miss, madam, whatever, director, we are not going to share that with you. This is internal information. So anyways, you can see why Scrum wants to do it that way. You may decide that you do want leadership in or whatever. And some organizations actually do two things. They have the team only, no leadership. And then they have, let's say, every month, once a month, they have a retrospective with leadership. Bring them everybody together to get a different flavor of a retrospective. Okay. Any questions here about the participants? So this is what I didn't show this slide intentionally because I wanted you guys to talk about it. Is we bring in only the team so they can speak their minds, and you will see a difference if you have only the team. Any questions about that? Is there anybody? So I think Mark noted that they are doing Scrum and retrospective and things like that. Anybody here that did retrospective, whether agile or not agile, doesn't matter, but did retrospective more in the style that I'm covering here? It looks like probably not. Not every people didn't go through that.
So we're doing something similar like this with a client now, and we're kind of developed a system and we're getting things as they come up largely. But the difficulty we're facing is getting to the bottom of what the issue is and putting the act part of plan, do, check, to act. We're having trouble getting past we have a list of stuff that's gone wrong, or maybe there's some opportunities in there too that weren't problems necessarily, but now what? And we can't push past that.
Yep. Are you familiar, not just you, everybody, are you familiar with the 5 whys? Anybody familiar with this idea of 5 whys? Do you want to explain to us, those of you who know? I think, Annette, I saw you raise your hand, I'm not wrong. Do you want to explain what you know about that?
Sure, it's getting to the root cause, right? Keep asking why until you get to the root cause. Otherwise, you're addressing symptoms, not the root cause.
Yes, Annette, I'm sorry. Did you want to chime in?
Well, that's really what you want to do is get to the root cause. I think you need to look at each question, and when you answer each question, then you have to ask why. It's a progression. I guess it's not five parallel questions. It's a narrowing, starting with one thought that leads to another. Sometimes it's less than five, sometimes it's more. Generally, it's five. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, pretty much, yes, pretty much so. So it's just a nice tool because Ellie mentioned earlier when you spoke, you said we have sometimes difficulty getting down to the root cause of something. So the 5 whys may be a good trick. Basically, somebody, you make an observation of something that maybe went wrong, like, I don't know, our computer crashed in the middle of the project. And then you ask why and find the answer because, I know, electricity went out. And then you ask why again. Oh, electricity went out because somebody pulled the plug. And you ask why again. Oh, you pulled the plug because blah, blah, blah. And the general experience is if you ask 4 or 5 times again and again, you, like Annette said, you drill down deeper and deeper, you eventually find out the real root cause. Why this person, pulled the plug or whatever, because he saw a fire. Why did he see a fire? I don't know, whatever. Because somebody forgot the cigarette. I don't know. And the reason is then you get to the root cause and say, okay, the problem is not the computer. The problem is that somebody smoked a cigarette without being careful. That's the problem, right? So since you mentioned root cause, this is a good way to think about it. And the other thing I think that you mentioned, which is even more important, and you mentioned it, is around, so what do we do with this? All right, so it's like, okay, we figured out there's a problem, people smoke cigarettes and it causes fire. So what do we do with this? Which you talked about action items. One of the biggest failures of postmodern, retrospective, whatever you want to call it, I mentioned it, I hinted to it a couple of times already. One of the biggest failures is that we finish it, we're very happy and proud of ourselves, we did a nice retrospective, we do not implement the action items. And in fact, we don't even take action items. Okay, so I'll move forward a little bit, and we can take a break.
Yeah.
Shall we take a break?
I don't know if you want to tell one more slide and then do a 5-minute break or now.
No, now is a good time. Thank you very much. We can take a break.
Okay, then we will be back at 10:45.
Thank you very much, everybody. See you 5 minutes. I'm staying on. If anybody wants to chat or ask a question, kind of something along these lines. Okay. So if they show up as part of the scope of the next project, then somebody will work on it. Right? Somebody will do it. In Agile specifically, again, for those of you who are familiar, you actually take the action items and you put them in the product backlog. Again, for those who are familiar with the Scrum, you put them in the product backlog, which is the collection of all the requirements for the project. So you know that people will be working on it going forward. So make sure, find a trick to make sure people work on it. Okay. Any questions? Okay, I'm fed up with these examples, but I think you understand. You understand the idea. What this is same story. So let's do it. I want to get to this point. First of all, before the let's do it, I open just very briefly because I want to do the exercise. Any questions or comments about what we have covered so far? I will try after the activity also to give some time for feedback on or comments and so on. If nothing at this moment, let's actually go ahead and do a little retrospective as the whole group. So let's do it. It's really simple. What is the topic? The topic, based on requests that I received, work at home during the COVID-19 era. And here's the kind of the description. Okay, so almost from the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, most people have been working from home. Meaning they were 24 hours a day at home in the same location with the family. They live with their family and work. For many, it is difficult to put boundaries between work and life and work and so on in office, the way they used to do in the office. At the same time, the family members may expect some attention, do household chores, and so on and so forth. Each one of you probably has some experience there. What I wanted to kind of frame it now, what I want to do in the exercise is, first of all, we are going to break you into breakout rooms, so we don't work 30 people in one session. That won't work. I will ask in a minute for Kiki to break everybody out into breakout rooms. Excuse me. And so you'll
Breakout
be.
rooms are ready.
Thank you.
Breakout rooms are ready. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Kiki. Once you are in the breakout room, you'll be something about 6-7 people in a room. Please, I'm suggesting to use this format, but you don't have to. If you like, I don't know what to use, then use this. Of course, you cannot do it probably this graphical way, but you can, if it is possible, to open a document, some kind of a document, and write. If anybody has access to Google Docs, you can quickly open a Google Docs or a Microsoft document, share it. You can share it in your breakout room. There is a possibility to share, so everybody can see what's being typed. And basically the question is, let's say, God forbid, that we are worried about being hit with another pandemic, let's say a year from today or 2 years out. What do we learn from this COVID-19 so we can handle the next pandemic? Hopefully it will never happen, but what do we learn from this that we can handle the next pandemic better? And try to focus more on the family side. I mean, the individual, we are an individual at home. What do we do to do a better job next time handling the pandemic? But you are welcome if you want to expand it a little more, maybe to your government or your city. In Chicago, how did Chicago handle it? How could you do better? And as we said, you want to ask the question, what did go well actually? Maybe some things did go well when we handled the COVID-19. We're still handling it. What didn't go so well, and so on and so forth. And maybe you have somebody to appreciate. Maybe, I don't know, the mayor of Chicago did a wonderful job and you think they deserve some kudos. But all with the face to how we're going to handle the next pandemic if God forbid it happens. Okay. Before we break out into rooms, when we come back, I will ask representatives from the teams to give a very brief, summary. What did you come up with? Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
So as we go through this retrospective, do we focus on what each individual could have controlled versus what someone else should have done, could have done, would have done, right?
Your job to decide. Completely, I intentionally say completely open, because
Okay.
each team will end up running the show a little differently.
Okay.
You can spend the first few seconds to, for example, to choose a facilitator, and the facilitator can run the show the way they understand.
Okay.
Also, you can spend a few seconds to pick a note taker, which is maybe the facilitator or maybe somebody else to take notes.
Okay.
And somebody that will then, after the meeting, after the breakout, will give us a quick summary of what they found out. Any other questions? Are we ready to go to breakout rooms? And please take it lightly. It's fun. Let's enjoy. Let's have fun. It's not we're not going into a 5-hour post-mortem. We're just throwing out stuff for fun. But let's see if it's useful. Last opportunity if anybody wants to ask any questions. Otherwise, we'll break out. Kiki, are we doing it like more or less how much? 15 minutes or 20?
15 minutes, I think it's
15
okay.
minutes? Okay, no, that sounds good. So we'll do a 15 minutes breakout. I'll be waiting here. Even if you want to invite me into your meeting because you have a question, you can ask me to come in. Otherwise, Kiki, please let's go ahead and do the breakout rooms. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're ready.
You should see an invitation to click and go into a breakout room. Perspective, we don't have time to cover entire retrospectives right now, but share with the audience here, let's say 1 or 2 bullet points that you like, oh wow, that was cool that we did the retrospective because we came up with this idea. I'm calling out just completely freely if there's anybody who wants to volunteer from any team and call out a point or two, or just a general description of what did we do.
Sure, I can go. This is Mark McLaughlin from our team.
Please.
Yeah, sure. A couple of things that I thought were good, especially around setting a structure for the family, putting together schedules, outlining kind of meetings or whatever during the day, and letting the family know that, as well as setting an alarm. And so we're going to be working to, let's say, 5 o'clock. We'll set the alarm till for an hour, and then after that time, it's available for the family. So just ways to structure.
Yes, and did you? You didn't have to, but did you get a sense, when I say you, not just you personally, but your team, did you get a sense of how popular this point was? Did people agree? Did people like, or?
Yeah, yeah, I think everybody said that was a great idea, and would probably be enacting that on their end.
Yeah, so I do think also it's a good idea. And the lessons learned from this is try to gauge what people think about each. Again, not to you, I'm talking to the whole audience here, right? People bring up ideas, there's a bunch of bullet points there, try to gauge them, try to prioritize, how much people feel strongly about each point, so you can figure out, which one do I want to focus on implementing and things like that. Great. Anybody else from any other team that says, I want to share a bullet point or something about the experience? Yes, Tracy.
Hi, this is Tracy, and I'll speak for our group, and actually anyone else on our team can pop in as well. So, so when we were going through and having this discussion, we were talking about the lesson learned that we definitely do not want to go back to how things were so rigid with the work-life flexibility that we're now experiencing, in part because we've all had to go remote. So definitely ensuring that going forward that we keep this flexibility, and kind of to build upon that flexibility, the willingness of companies, schools, individuals to be able to flex where needed to accommodate different schedules. And communications was a huge thing, especially in our new ideas. So we wanted to make sure that we actively work towards more communications, make sure that we stay in communications with the team, and avoid kind of, I think Susan had said, kind of we don't want to get into a cocoon. We want to be able to leverage new technologies to expand our connections, and also to improve those crucial conversations. And something that we would like to see would be a seminar or trainings on how we can get a foundation to pursue those crucial conversations and ensure the opening of those communication lines. So everybody else jump in if there was something else that you want to chime in on.
Suzanne is very excited about, I'm too, by the way, so cool. Yeah, anybody wants to jump in from Tracy's team? Okay. I want to ask Tracy, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of tackle you here, so to speak. I'm not putting you, on point here, but if you, let's say you were a facilitator of this, and you're working for the government or something to figure out how do we handle the pandemic better, from the bullet points that you guys collected, or from what you mentioned here to everybody, can you derive a practical action item to go forward? Oh, yeah. What are you going to do next, kind of thing?
I think one of the biggest, easiest, and kind of the low-hanging fruit was an idea that that Susan had about a course to improve communication. So that's something that, she basically came up with that idea and that action item. So there's also other things too that we had kind of talked about, like how to better understand technology. So an action item could be for us as individuals to explore the different technologies that we have access to educate ourselves, to have, the government provide education opportunities for individuals to learn how to use technology or broaden the scope of technology and availability to individuals in underserved communities, ensuring everyone has a laptop or everyone has Wi-Fi or something along that line. So yeah, another one was appreciating compassion and mindfulness. So just having a more kind and compassionate and understanding tone that we would put forth as a governmental agency to be more welcoming of folks.
Great, thank you. I want to go back for a moment to you, Mark, if you don't mind. And again, just an exercise for everybody to help and ask, okay, this retrospective was for the family, right? You talked about the family. What concrete action item would you take out of the points that you shared with us? And it's not just an action item, it's really something, it's an action. It's got to be, somebody's going to do this. It's got to be concrete, not general kind of, we need to make things better, but a concrete action item. And who would you give that action item to from the items that you collected?
Okay, well, if we just want to stay with the example I used, doing the schedule, right? So putting together your schedule, posting it somewhere where the entire family can see it, and then just discussing with them when you're going to be available and when you're not, right? So everybody's on the same page, and then just making clear boundaries, right? Like say you have a meeting till 4:30, and then being clear that at 4:30 you're available to the family, and that if there's anything that's urgent or something like that, if it can wait till then. So I would say just making sure that happens.
So I would like you to phrase it as a single short bullet point.
Okay.
With a name on it.
Okay. I'll say for myself, make schedule and post for family.
Okay, cool. Doesn't matter if everybody agrees or not, but this is what I'm trying to drive to is you gave us a good narrative, and also Tracy and so on, a good narrative to explain what it is we're trying to do it. What do we want to improve and how? But at the bottom line, I want to see you should aim to have a short, succinct bullet point of action item that says, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so will do X, Y, Z. Then it becomes super clear what's the next step and who needs to do it. Because by the way, I forgot, I should have put it in my presentation that it's not enough only to collect action items. When you identify action items in the retrospective, put a name on it right away. Never leave it open after the end of the meeting. Make sure that you go out of the meeting, not just with action items, but they have to have a name on it. So if somebody's, and usually you as a facilitator will be doing it. So somebody will say, we need to do X, Y, Z, and you will send, right, okay, I'm writing an action item, do X, Y, Z. And then you say, who's going to do it? And you wait. And you don't give up until somebody volunteers. And if nobody speaks up, you're going to say, if nobody volunteers for that, I will have to erase it because it's useless to have an action item that nobody wants to work on. And sort of like to politely put pressure, so kind of psychological pressure to find somebody to work on it. If nobody wants to work on it, we'll just drop it. We don't need it because it's useless again if we don't do anything about it. So very politely and very professionally, try to find out who wants to work on it. And then hold them to it. Okay, hold them to it. After the meeting, you can set out a quick list of action items and say, Joe, you took this action item, you volunteered for this, and Janet, you volunteered for that, and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very powerful mechanism. All right, anybody else who wants to chime in from their team, from their group, some nice, interesting highlight?
Well, I thought our group got a little more excited when we thought with new ideas to suggest ways to prevent pain from social distancing. And so if you have children that are introverted, the suggestion was to consciously set up virtual play dates and just have them on the schedule so that your kids are interacting with other kids, even though they may have not have been set up that way as much in school. And the other one was for people who live alone, if you can isolate as a group at the beginning so that you're all quarantining together, you're all cleaning together, then you're not by yourself for a year. If there's space to do it.
Nice. I want to ask you again also the same question. So if you take the first bullet point, I think it was about setting up play days for kids and things like that. Can you succinctly give us an action item, short and sweet? Who needs to do what next?
It would be up to the parents to look at the social network of their kids and set up the virtual play dates.
No, I'm saying
No?
your family. Right now, you came up with a great idea. I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. But
I actually don't have any children, but I guess my children, my oldest is getting married this year, but it's this was from other people in the group who made the suggestion.
Right.
So
yeah, I'll jump in. This one was mine, so I'll take you off the hot seat there, Annette.
Yes.
This one could be, Amy contacts District 201 and sets up local play dates for grade 6.
Beautiful. And I apologize, Annette, I probably shouldn't have pressured you on that. I'm not looking to you privately. But what I wanted is, so I apologize again, but really what I wanted is this kind of thing. So how do we take it from a concept into a concrete action item that we know exactly who's going to do and what we expect them to do in the near future? So again, I apologize on that. So great. I hope you get the gist of it. Now,
I do.
Yeah, everybody. Now, cognizant of time, I want to switch around a little bit now. And I'm sorry, other teams, I'm sure you made a great job. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to ask each team to give me those bullet points. Although I think maybe it's a good idea for each team to, if you wrote it down, to send the list in to the organizers here. Maybe they want to post it someplace. But I want to ask the team now a different question. Reflect on the retrospective and share with us how did it go. Not action items. What do you think? Was it a good retrospective? What is it? Did it work well, or is it kind of a waste of time? It didn't work well. We enjoyed it. We didn't enjoy it. It was efficient, effective. Anybody wants to reflect on that?
I can.
Please, Caroline.
I believe for our group that met, it was almost, I don't know, maybe others have different perspectives, but it almost seemed like we had been working together for a very long time. It was almost like people started talking and, Annette brought up, okay, we're going to use this tool. Everybody agreed and started everything off. And it didn't seem forced at all. And I believe the interaction with people was valuable. So I said, hey, I have a suggestion. Great, what is it? And then, every single person had a comment. And I believe, Annette, I'm going to put you on the spot. There might have been others that might have been a bit shy. And it was a nice, hey, what do you think? So everybody had a say. So I thought it was valuable.
And so first of all, a good point is you really talked about a little bit about the psychology of the people, right? People who actually jive together pretty quickly and felt comfortable. Everybody should be aware that it's not always the case. Sometimes you come into a meeting, it's a little bit more awkward before people, begin to warm up, and that's natural. It should happen, but it's good. But I also would like to ask you, Caroline, on top of the fact that things went nicely and smoothly and good rapport and all of that, did you feel it was effective? Everybody did some good job there, good stuff, more or less.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because really, it's all about, for you guys, everybody here, not just you, for everybody to reflect on this presentation, on this discussion today, and ask yourself, do I like this idea now? Do I think it's a good idea? Or do I want to go back maybe to postmortem? Do I think retrospective actually is not such a good idea? You really need to make this decision for yourself. Otherwise, you don't take you don't take good feedback for yourself about this experience today.
I think we were all very aware that we had a short period of time to kind of get everything together. So the mere fact of boom, jump in, let me share my screen, let's go. And, I thought we used we made efficient use of time, that's for sure.
That's beautiful. And that's one of the principles of Agile, right? Be simplistic and quick and easy and light. Don't make a PhD out of everything, no need. And sometimes you'll be surprised how quickly things can ramp up and people can jump in and just get things done. As long as they know that we don't have to take it so hard and do such a thorough, operation of everything. Just come in, do quickly, go back out. It's not perfect, it's not 100%, but in a very short time you gain 80%. Well, that's pretty good in 20 minutes to do 80% of the job. I think it's not too bad. Anybody else wants to share, like, how did it go?
I thought it went, for our group, I thought it went exceptionally well. I think the plot, well, it went well. I don't know that we got to the ideas for change, but I do have something that came out of everyone. But I'd say what works well is starting off with what went well, right? Because then it kind of leads into the next. So it starts on a positive note. And so people are more likely to engage and to start discussion. And each person talked first about what went well. So that was a good thing. One of the ideas that came out, though, was that in terms of like increasing bandwidth, that, and that's because we don't know. It was sudden. It's sudden for many of us. So suddenly we were working in the office, now sudden. So it's the increase. There's to identify bandwidth needs, and then to contact vendors, to identify those associated costs, all of those things that need to happen that we hadn't thought about before. You didn't have to, So now everyone's at home and we're all accessing the internet at the same time, So that was one of the things. So there were some great ideas from the team, but that was it. One other was the commute, reduction in commute. But I think everyone just jumped in. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. I do think, I cannot prove it, but I do think that the nature of retrospective being so light and a little bit more, game-like or whatever you want to call it, it helps people warm up quickly. They don't feel like, oh my God, this is life and death now. I have to think very carefully. I have to prepare for 3 hours what I'm going to say and blah, blah, blah. Just come in, have fun, and do it. Yes, go ahead.
I apologize. You gave us something that was focused. That was important. And I won't interrupt again.
Good point. And it brings me to the comment I made earlier, which is bring your own ideas into the discussion. It helps people already jump right away and start talking about stuff. And that helps. It's a good learning lesson too. Yeah. Okay. By the way, I'm available to be here as long as you guys need. If you want to continue, if you feel this discussion is useful, I'm very happy to continue. What I want to do now is, like the last part of this discussion, is open, and I apologize that I didn't give each and every team here an opportunity to talk about how it went for you. You're welcome to do it now, but I want to open this kind of generally to say, okay, I'm done with my stuff. Excuse me. Anything you want to bring up? Anybody here about retrospectives in general? Before that, one more question I think came to my mind. Any one of you who thinks this little exercise went well, give me a thumbs up. That's all. Just anybody who thinks. You can do it also electronically if you want. Okay. So,
I think the future there might be 2 discussions about the exercise afterward. One about the results that came out of each retrospective, but also some discussion about the facilitation of the retrospective. Both.
Yes. Yep.
So it might make sense to shorten the tool discussion part and allow more time at the end for both discussions.
I like it.
Because in the end, I think all of us are going to end up facilitating these.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, especially if you like more project managers and stuff like that. There is some expectation there. And definitely, if you go into more agile stuff, then it's going to be even more so. If you're Scrum Master and stuff, that will be part of your job. Official responsibility. So I'm opening now, like I said, completely for anybody to say anything you want about this, ask any questions, make any observations from your own experience, on your own thinking, or if you want to also tell us how your retrospective went, by all means. So I'm opening whatever you want to talk about.
Hello.
Hello,
This
hello.
is Darcy.
Yes.
I feel a bit of a tension that I would appreciate your input on, or anyone's. You put up a slide that said it's not something about it's not what we experienced, but how we reflect on what we experienced. Something
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
And I feel a bit of a tension between this kind of a retrospective, which I totally understand everything you've said for the reasons why it works. But I also think sometimes there's not enough time to truly reflect. So what do you do about that?
And when you say not enough time, you mean during the meeting?
During the meeting, or if it's an impromptu retrospective, or if someone else has a beef and says we need a retrospective now, you know, or whatever. So what are some ways you've learned to circumvent the spontaneity and allow for reflection?
It's a good point. I think I would not want to extend the meeting too much to give people time to reflect. Because at least in Agile, the Agile world where I come from, you know, doing things relatively quickly so we don't end up, you know, all our lives in meetings, endless meetings. That's important. But at the same time, you're right. I don't want to, you know, limit people, restrict them from doing this reflection that you are talking about. And so, first of all, as the facilitator, you need to sense in the room that people feel like we don't have enough time. Hopefully you can sense it or ask people, and then you can arrange other meetings or follow-up meetings. Because also when you talk about reflection, probably people don't want to reflect about all the 20 items that were brought up. People usually will focus on 1 or 2 items and say, this is where I need to spend more time and reflect. So the next meeting, we can focus on that item.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's a perfect answer because you're right. Maybe one of the one of the bad things of retrospective is that it may be too short. People want time to think. But I would not change the retrospective itself. I would try to go for a follow-up where people want to reflect. I will allow people therefore I would take something like along the lines of, okay, we came up with 20 items. People want to reflect. People told me they want to reflect on item number 3. I'm going to set up a meeting 2 days from now on item number 3 only. Please, everybody, think about it before the meeting, and let's spend some time reflecting on it in the meeting, during the meeting. So I'm going to give the time. But I would, but the retrospective, the initial retrospective itself, I would prefer not to extend and go into long discussions to allow reflection, because I think it's important to give the people the sense of we're coming in, we're doing, like I said, this is the 80%. You were talking about reflection, that's the additional 20%. I'd like to do it later, separately.
Would you ever have this is Marcia, would you ever have like reflections throughout the project and then at the end, sort of a larger meta reflection, the reflection on the reflections, the reflections on the project overall, because a lot of your smaller reflections are reflections of those particular experiences as opposed to the entire thing. Did we meet our objective of doing this project in the first place? And those, you know, and that might be a place possibly where you could have some of the more reflections or deeper reflections. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, yes, I agree totally. Some companies will do retrospectives, let's say, at the end of each iteration. And then if there's a big project that ended, they will feel the need to sit down and do a deeper dive about what happened. And that has its own advantages for sure. And there's nothing wrong with doing it. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not saying throw away throw away, postmortems or whatever, lessons learned completely. What I'm saying is, I'm saying rather bring in the retrospective as a quick and effective way to do it frequently. But that doesn't mean you have to give away a bigger, more thoughtful, more reflective lessons learned. Let's call it lessons learned at the end of the project. They are not in conflict. It's not exclusive, not mutually exclusive. So the answer is yes, you're right. If people feel like, yeah, I haven't, these things are too short, I didn't have time to really reflect on some of the more significant things, long-term things, heavier things, I feel like we need to have a bigger powwow at the end of the project to think more deeply. Why not? Of course. if people think it'll be effective, sure. But what I'm kind of advocating is don't do this as the only thing at the end of the project, right? Do these short ones, do these retrospectives frequently. Any other questions or comments? I will wait a few more seconds to see if anybody wants to. I'm just cognizant of time, right? If you want. I'm staying here. I'm happy to stay more. If anybody wants to chat more, I'll give you another 30 seconds or whatever if you decide, if you want to bring up any other questions. Otherwise, we can conclude.
I have a lot of curiosity now on where you can learn more about implementing changes after you've identified, beyond developing action items and assigning them, some of the actual cultural barriers, or EEFs, if you will, are the hardest thing to solve, to actually implement change, even if it is to benefit. I know that's not an answer you can give me here, but kind of curious, other than experience and reflecting on those experiences, where can you pick up more skills in that area?
There's probably an encyclopedia about that. So I cannot really give you a good quality answer. And it probably depends more on your specific situation in your company and organization. Because I'm sensing a pain point. So depending what the pain point is, we can talk offline if you want. But generally, there is, I think that's what you're talking about. There is, in many cases, resistance to change, right? And I think that's what you're asking. How do I overcome resistance to change? It's completely different. Yeah. There's so many things that you can do, and yet nothing is guaranteed. Things like, first of all, try to change maybe your leadership if they are not resistant. Leadership can help a lot with influencing the lower level performers to do change. It depends. There's too much. I don't think it's the right opportunity right now to go all of this, but we can talk offline if you want.
Yeah, sure. I was kind of curious if there's books or other change management certificates and things like that, or places to go for that kind of thing.
Yeah, go to the internet and search change management, and you're going to regret it. because you'll get thousands of hits. Good stuff. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head right now to send you to a specific website to say this is the good one. There's just tons and tons and tons and tons of that.
All right, thanks.
I was going to say, Eli, there is a certification called a Certified Change Management Professional, so that might be someplace you could at least look.
Yeah, I actually Googled that earlier. I'll keep digging.
Yes, thank you, Julie. Good point. I forgot. Yeah, you can get certificate for anything today, and that might be a good thing. Yes. I know I didn't give you an answer because it's really very complex.
I know. I was looking for a point in a direction.
So maybe the certificate is a good one. Yeah. Another thing I sometimes do, I go to like a place like Amazon, and I search, let's say, change management, and I look the hits, and I sort the books by number of stars, right? By recommendation. See which book got the most stars. So I say, okay, I guess this is a good book on the topic, and I go blindly for that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Calling once. Calling twice. Okay, I think we are over time a little bit anyways. So I think all I can say is thank you very much. I enjoyed, I liked what I said. I also liked what you guys said. I think we heard a lot of very, very good quality stuff here. I'm curious to see if you want to send me those bullet points you came up with this example. I'll learn how to handle COVID-19 for my family. I don't know if you want to share it with the organizers here and they can post it somewhere. I hope you took some value from this going forward, and those of you who didn't do it may want to try it. And thank you very much for the time and the opportunity. I appreciate it. And I think I'll turn things over back to Susmita and Kiki. Also, thank you, ladies. And thank you. That's it. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I saw Tracy shared a file. How do you share the file?
Wow. I get a certificate.
Oh, look at that.
Moshe, thank you for the extra time.
Thank you.
And for this amazing interactive and fun workshop. We really appreciate your contribution to our goal to help our community grow their skills. And we would like to thank all of you for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you to our upcoming events. To our previous workshops, we got many feedback, and many of the participants asked for Microsoft project. So we have managed and arranged one session or 2 sessions with Sutan Ugos and Oliver Gilbersleeve. So if you are interested, please check them out. Here is the QR code for the survey and for your attendance today. Please make sure that you have submitted your attendance in order to get these PDUs. And if you encounter any issue with that, please let us know.